So next Governor General of Bengal was Lord Cornwallis from 1787 to 93. From 1787 to 93. Okay. See, he was the first English nobleman who came to India as a Governor General. First English nobleman means he was from very good family background, noble family background. Okay. And from that, he was from noble family background, as well as he was also in the military. I told you already that from 1776 to 1782, American Revolution was going on. So he was fighting, he was leading the British army in America. Though he surrendered, he was defeated in Battle of Yorktown, America. So he was defeated. So after that, after American Revolution, he was actually sent by Board of Control to India to look into the Indian affair. Okay. So he was the first Englishman from noble family, our first English nobleman who came to India as a Governor General. Aristocracy, highly background, means high class family. When he came to India, lot of reform actually took place during his tenure. Okay. And when he was coming to India, Court of Director COD asked him to find long-lasting solution of Indian revenue. Okay. Actually, the revenue of India, of East India Company, was not actually in very good position. Financial condition was not very sound and stable at that time, because there was actually constant fluctuation in the revenue collection. Because you know the geography padha hai, have you read geography? You know about El Nino, La Nina, etc. Okay. So Indian monsoon is actually one of the most unpredictable thing in the world. Whenever IMD says this year monsoon is going to be good, definitely it is going to be very bad or worse. And when they say it is not going to be very good, then there will be more and more rainfall. So it is highly unpredictable. And within every 5-6 year, El Nino condition is there. And because of El Nino, there is deficient rainfall in India. And that led to, at that time, famine-like situation in India. Okay. So Indian revenue was actually, and agricultural revenue was actually the main source of revenue that was collected by the EIC at that time. So it was fluctuating constantly. So he was specifically told to actually solve this problem. Okay. So he is also known for his land revenue. He is also known for his land revenue settlement. So next heading, land revenue settlement of Cornwallis. Right. Next heading, land revenue settlement of Lord Cornwallis. Land revenue settlement of Lord Cornwallis. Before coming through this land revenue settlement that was introduced by Lord Cornwallis, we must know what was the arrangement that was before Cornwallis. Actually, British became the ruler of Bengal during the dual system of government. 1765. Okay. So Britishers, because EIC got the Diwani right, so they got the right to collect the revenue, but they were unaware about they were not familiar with the rural India, because they were new in India. So it was not possible for them actually to collect the money from the peasants directly. So company was, EIC was actually Diwan. EIC was basically Diwan. They got the Diwani right, means right to collect, but they were not familiar well with the rural economy. So they were not in position to collect the revenue directly from it. Okay. So in that case, company used to appoint an intermediary known as Nayab Diwan. So a post of Nayab Diwan was created, and Indians were recruited for this post, and it was the responsibility of these Nayab Diwan to collect the revenue from the peasants with the help of traditional landlords. Okay, are you getting my point? So these Nayab Diwan, on the behalf of company, they used to collect the revenue from the peasants, and they used to deposit the amount to the EIC. Out of total collection, 90% was to be deposited to EIC, and 10% was actually kept by landlord for their services. They are collecting the revenue now. So they need manpower, they need people to collect the revenue. So for their services, they used to keep 10% of the revenue. That was the arrangement. Like Muhammad Raja Khan, he became the Nayab Diwan of Bengal. Clear? Raja Sitab Roy, he became the Nayab Diwan of Bihar. So similarly, Indian were appointed at the post of Nayab Diwan, and they got the responsibility to collect the revenue from the peasants. That was the arrangement made during dual system of government. And in 1772, dual system was actually abolished by Warren Hastings. And Britishers, they took the direct control of Bengal. Now there is no dual government. Okay, post of Nawab was actually abolished, and English became the Britishers, they became the direct ruler of Bengal. I hope this is clear. Clear. So this arrangement was there till 1772. After 1772, in 1772, Warren Hastings, he became what? Governor General. So when he became the Governor General, he introduced new land revenue settlement known as quinquennial settlement. Quinquennial settlement means nothing but 5-year settlement. Quinquennial settlement means 5-year settlement was actually introduced by Warren Hastings. In quinquennial settlement, 5-yearly settlement, land was actually auctioned. Agricultural land was auctioned, and the highest bidder became landlord. Highest bidder used to become landlord, and these landlord got the responsibility to basically collect the revenue from the peasants. Okay, highest bidder got the revenue collection right. And out of total revenue that was collected, 90% was deposited to EIC, and 10% was actually kept by these landlords for their services. Whatever the bidding amount, so 90% of the bidding amount was to be deposited to EIC, and 10% kept by landlords for their services. So quinquennial settlement was actually introduced for period of 5 years. And it was said that land revenue would not be increased period of 5 years. So that was good deal. But under this quinquennial settlement, peasants of India actually suffered, especially Bengal, Bihar, and Odisha. They suffered miserably. It is very simple. Take an example of 2022. India is a democratic country. We elect our representative for assembly as well as for parliament for how many years? For 5 years. And in 5 years, they do all kind of things. They loot us. Right or wrong? Most of the leader. That is true or not? Because most of the leader, they used to loot. Reason is very simple, because they are not sure whether after 5 years they are going to get the ticket from the party. If they get the ticket from the party, they are going to win the election. They are not sure. So that's why they do a lot of corruption in 5 years. Similarly, same case here. They got the right for how many years? 5 years. Say they looted, they exploited peasants as much as possible, because they were not sure that whether they would continue their term after 5 years. That was the case. I hope this is clear. So ultimately, who suffered? Peasants. Peasants suffered miserably under this Quinnipiac settlement. So this settlement was dropped in 1777 by Warren Hastings. He again shifted to annual settlement. Annual settlement. Okay. Land revenue of each and every year would be decided. Okay, so annual settlement. There was again problem in annual settlement. What was the problem? Suppose if monsoon is good, then in that case, farmer would be able to pay their taxes on time. But if monsoon is not good, if drought or flood like situation is there in India, then in that case, they would not able to deposit their revenue on time. So there was fluctuation in the revenue. And that's why Court of Director actually directed Cornwallis to settle this issue permanently. So when Cornwallis came, he introduced new land revenue settlement that we'll discuss a little bit later. I hope this is clear. So this kind of land revenue, land settlement arrangement was there before the arrival of the Cornwallis, or you can say after the Battle of Buxar. Clear? Dual government, Nayab Diwan were appointed during the time of Warren Hastings. Quinquennial settlement was introduced, and later again he shifted to annual settlement. I hope this is clear. So note it down. Right heading, evolution of land revenue settlement. Next subheading, evolution of land revenue settlement. Evolution of land revenue settlement. Under this first point, right? Arrangement under dual government system. Dual government system. Right. During this period, company appointed Nayab Diwan. During this period, company appointed Nayab Diwan. For example, Muhammad Raza Khan was appointed as Nayab Diwan of Bengal. Muhammad Raza Khan was appointed as Nayab Diwan of Bengal. Raja Sitab Roy of Bihar, etc. Raja Sitab Roy, SITAB. Raja Sitab Roy, SITAB. Raja Sitab Roy. Okay. Next point. These Nayab Diwan used to collect the revenue. These Nayab Diwan used to collect the revenue. With the help of traditional landlord. Okay, next point. Out of revenue, out of total collected revenue, 90% was to be deposited. 90% was to be deposited. 90% was to be deposited to the company, and 10% was kept by landlord, for their services. 10% was kept by landlord for their services. Clear? Next heading, quinquennial settlement, 5-yearly settlement. Quinquennial settlement, 5-yearly settlement. Right. This settlement was introduced in 1772 by Warren Hastings. This settlement was introduced in 1772 by Warren Hastings. And under this settlement, landlord were given right. And under this settlement, landlord were given right to collect the revenue for a period of 5 years. To collect the revenue for a period of 5 years. Okay, next point. These landlords were selected through auction process, auction bidding, AUCTION, auction. These landlords were selected through auction process, bidding process. Auction. ऑक्शन बोली लगना, यही बोलते हैं ना. अरे आईपीएल टीम का ऑक्शन होता है, सेम थिंग. हाँ, तो हाईएस्ट बिडर वुड गेट व्हाट, फ्रेंचाइजी ऑफ आईपीएल टीम. होता है कि नहीं? सेम थिंग. क्लियर? नेक्स्ट पॉइंट. This system failed miserably. This system failed miserably because the jamindars or landlords, exploited the peasants, to maximum possible extent. To maximum possible extent, as they were not sure of continuation of their term, after 5 years. And peasants suffered immensely. Clear? Next point. In 1777, this system was dropped. And practice of annual settlement was adopted. Paragraph change and write. Cornwallis introduced decennial system or decennial settlement. Cornwallis introduced decennial means 10-year settlement. Land revenue was fixed for a period of 10 years. Next heading. Feature of decennial system / permanent settlement. Feature of decennial and permanent settlement is same. There is very small difference. Actually, this decennial system was introduced in 1790 by Lord Cornwallis. But in 1793, this system was changed into permanent settlement. It was converted into, so the land revenue was actually fixed on a permanent basis. Earlier, it was fixed for a period of only 10 years, but later on, it was actually fixed on a permanent basis. That's why it is also known as permanent settlement. I hope this is clear. Okay. So land revenue settlement is very important feature. Permanent settlement, it was introduced by Lord Cornwallis and his assistant Sir John Shore. He was basically the member of Executive Council. Okay. And he actually played very important role in introducing this scheme. I hope this is clear. Clear? So now I'm going to discuss the important feature of decennial system. Okay, or permanent settlement feature. First important feature. See, in this sense, in this settlement, in this system, landlord, also known as jamindar, they became the owner of the land. Owner of land means ownership was transferred from peasants to jamindar. Now peasants, they are no more the owner of the land. In earlier settlement, landlord, they used to collect tax from the peasants, but they were not the owner of the land. Now ownership was transferred to whom? Landlord or jamindar. This was the first important feature of this settlement. So peasants or farmer, they became what? Landless tenant. Clear? Second feature, landlord, they became what? Owner of the land. Second feature, these landlord were selected through auction process again. And highest bidder used to become what? Landlord or jamindar. And these ownership was hereditary in nature, means the son of jamindar will also become what? Jamindar. That was the case. It was also hereditary in nature till he is paying his taxes on time. I hope this is clear. So highest bidder was awarded what? Land ownership. Clear? Third point, whatever was the bidding amount, okay, 89% of the bidding amount was to be deposited to EIC and 11% was kept by landlord. 89% was to be deposited to the company and 11% was to be kept by the landlord for his services. I hope this is clear. Third major important point. And over a period of time, some other changes were also introduced in this act. For example, in 1794, sunset law, or you can say clause, was introduced in this act, in this system. Sunset clause was introduced in this act. What is sunset clause? Means, suppose I am jamindar and a date was actually fixed. By the 21st December here, I have to deposit the bidding amount to the EIC. If by the sunset of 21st December, if I am not able to pay my taxes, then in that case, EIC has every right to actually confiscate my property. That is known as what? Sunset clause. Very dangerous clause. By the sunset of suppose fixed date, that date was that whatever the date, that is fixed by the company. If as a jamindar, if I'm not able to pay my dues on time, then in that case, my property would be confiscated by EIC. Clear? Sunset clause. Sunset law was introduced in 1794. Clear? Similarly, in 1799, another provision was introduced that is known as haptum. In 1799, another provision was introduced that is known as haptum. And under this haptum, jamindars, landlords, they also got the right to evict any peasants from his land. Judicial. Let us suppose in Hyderabad city, I am living on rent in your house. Okay. So at the midnight, 12 o'clock, you cannot come enter my room and say evict room. Okay. You cannot do that. Or after 15 days, you come and say your rent is actually 10,000. From tomorrow, you'll give 20,000. Otherwise, you leave your room. You cannot do that. Because you and me are bound by certain agreement. Are you getting my point? But here, without going through any judicial, what I was saying, haptum was introduced, so they also got the right actually to remove the pigeons their land without going through any judicial sorry, without going through any judicial legal process. Okay, so from 1799 onwards, farmers, landless tenants, they were actually dependent on the mercy of the zamindars. I hope this is clear. So these were the important provision that was there in the land revenue settlement that was introduced by Cornwallis, known as decennial system settlement. Later it was converted into permanent settlement. I hope this is clear. Clear. So note it down. Note it down. The landlord were declared as a owner of land. The landlord were declared as a owner of land. The landlord were declared as a owner of land, and ownership was transferred to the landlord. Ownership right as the ownership right was transferred to the landlord. As the ownership right was transferred to the landlord. Next point. The amount of land revenue paid. The amount of land revenue paid to the government, land revenue to the government was determined by auction process. Was determined by auction process. Determined by auction process. Okay, next point. The highest bidder were given the right to collect land revenue. The highest bidder right to collect land revenue and the zamindari right. And the zamindari right. Next point. 89% of the bidding amount. 89% of the bidding amount was to be deposited. 89% of the bidding amount was to be deposited to EIC, and 11% kept by landlord for their services. Landlord for their services. Clear? Next point. Permanent settlement was introduced. Permanent settlement was introduced initially. Permanent settlement was introduced initially in Bengal. In Bengal, Bihar, and Odisha. Introduced in Bihar, Bengal, and Odisha. Bengal, Bihar, Odisha. Okay. Next point. In 1794, sunset clause was introduced. In 1794. In 1794, sunset clause was introduced, and under this law, landlord could be expelled. Under this law, landlord could be expelled from his land. If he fails to deposit, the revenue by the sunset of last day fixed by the government. Last day fixed by the government. Okay. Next point. in 1799, Haptum was introduced. Haptum was introduced. Haptum was introduced, which empowered Jamindar, which empowered Jamindar to remove the peasants, which empowered Jamindar to remove the peasant from their land without following any judicial legal process. Without going to any judicial legal process. So now peasants, they are at the mercy of Jamindar. See, under this settlement, Jamindars were expected to collect only the bidding amount from the peasants. But in reality, after this clause, they extracted as much. Clear? So note it down. The Jamindars were expected to collect. The Jamindars were expected to collect. The Jamindars were expected to collect only the bidding amount from peasants. Only the bidding amount from the peasants. Only the bidding amount from peasants. But in reality, peasants were at the mercy of Jamindar. Peasants were at the mercy of Jamindar. Okay. And another important feature under this act was Jamindar also got the right to grant patta and kabuliyat. I don't know what you say this in Telugu. Patta means patta jante ho? Acha. So currently village sarpanch had right to actually grant patta to landless tenants or peasants in the village area. Okay. Currently, in 2022, village sarpanch, village headman has the right to grant patta. But in reality, they grant patta not to the real stakeholder, real people, but they grant to their own people. That is correct. So at that time, though this provision was there, Jamindar got the right to grant patta and kabuliyat. But there was no mechanism basically to ensure this provision. Even today, there is no mechanism to ensure it on the ground. So at that time also, there was no mechanism. Clear? So note it down. The Jamindar were expected to grant. The Jamindars were expected to grant. The Jamindars were expected to grant patta means title deed. Patta and kabuliyat to the landless. To the landless tenant. To the landless tenant. But in reality, there was no arrangement. But in reality, there was no arrangement to ensure it. Okay. And last point, under this settlement, policing power. That point we'll discuss a little bit later. Just note it down. Under this settlement, policing power, police means maintaining law and order. Policing power was taken from Jamindar. Earlier means Jamindar had the responsibility to maintain law and order in the village area. Now that power was actually taken by the government. Now it is the duty of the government to actually maintain law and order. We will discuss this point a little bit later. Okay, so these were the important provision that was actually there in decennial, or you can say permanent settlement. Clear? Clear. So this topic is very important. In every 2 or 3 year UPSC generally asks question from this land revenue settlement. Either they ask from permanent settlement, Riyatwari settlement, and Mahalwari settlement. From these area UPSC generally asks question. Even state services also ask question. Okay. So these were the important provision. But question is, why this system was introduced by Britishers at first place? Solution for the proper revenue collection. Anyone else? What was the expectation of the company? Why this system was actually introduced by company? This in permanent settlement. Land revenue was fixed on a permanent basis. So it was profitable to company or loss for company? How it was profitable? See, question is, land revenue I'm talking about. I'm not talking about Jamindar. Was fixed on a permanent basis. Suppose government is collecting revenue from me. Suppose I am paying 1 lakh rupees tax each and every year. So what is the expectation of the government? Next year, government want to charge more and more. But if my tax is fixed for on a permanent basis, then in that case, next year also I will have to pay 1 lakh, 1 lakh, 1 lakh. So it is profitable for me or government? It is profitable for me, not government. So similarly, land revenue was actually fixed on a permanent basis. Government could not increase the land revenue in future. So in future, that is not means that this system was not actually profitable to the government. But here, what was the advantage? Government got fixed, stable, and secure income. Government got what? Fixed. It was loss for the government because next year also they are going to get same amount. Next year, next to next year, they are also going to get the same amount. So in long term, it was not profitable for the government. But what was the advantage of this scheme? Government actually got fixed, stable, and secure income on a permanent basis. That was the first advantage, first expectation of the company from this settlement. That's why this settlement was actually introduced. I hope this is clear. This was the first expectation of the company. Second expectation was of the company was actually now, from now onwards, the English officials, the British officials, they are free from revenue collection responsibility. They are free from what? Revenue collection responsibility. Now, that manpower could be used for another administrative purpose. Okay. And it is the responsibility of the Jamindar or landlord to collect the revenue. Now, who is going to collect the revenue? And if they are not going to deposit the revenue by the sunset of last day fix, then in that case, their property would be confiscated. So no worry, no tension for the EIC. Now, who is going to take all the tension? Jamindar. Okay, so that was the second expectation of the company, and company thought that in future, if our administration governance will be good, sound, then in that case, we would apply the taxes on trade and commerce, and from there, we will generate the revenue. I hope this is clear. So that was the expectation of the company. Though this system was not actually beneficial for the company, but that was that they said that, okay, now it is not our headache. We are going to focus more and more on administration. Okay. And if focus more on administration, then in that case, trade and commerce will flourish. So we'll generate revenue from there. That was the expectation of the company. Okay. Next expectation was these Jamindar, these landlord, they would act as what? Pillar of strength for the company. They would act as a pillar of strength for the company because the existence of Jamindar is dependent on the existence of the company. Till company is in India, they are enjoying the privilege. If there would be no company, then in that case, there would be no Jamindar. So existence of Jamindar was dependent on the existence of EIC. Say they would made every effort to keep the EIC or Britishers here in India. So that's why in 1857 revolt, that we will discuss later, in 1857 revolt, these Jamindars, these landlords, actually, they supported the Britishers against the rebellion. Because the existence of Jamindar was dependent on the existence of the company. Company nahi, wo Jamindar nahi. Are you getting my point? That was the another expectation of the government. That's why this system was, or this settlement was actually introduced. I told you already, they were very smart people. Huh? Another settlement, sorry, another expectation under this settlement. They believed that, they genuinely believed that this system proved to be beneficial for Indian agriculture. How? Because Jamindar as well as peasants, they would make an effort to increase the productivity. How? They are going to invest more in the agriculture because they had to deposit only the bidding amount. Any surplus production would be kept by peasants as well as landlord. So they are going to invest more and more in the agriculture sector. That was the expectation of the company. But in reality, Jamindars, they were not interested in investing in agriculture activity, and peasants, they were also not active because peasants knew that we are at the mercy of the Jamindar. Why should I invest? It is the responsibility of Jamindar because land belongs to whom? Jamindar. Suppose I am living as a tenant in your house, then in that case, it is not my responsibility to repair your room. Na? Are you getting my point? So that was the another expectation, that agriculture would improve. But in reality, these peasants actually suffered. There was, because there was no investment from the Jamindar side. Okay. So these were the expectations. But in each and every expectation, there was actually a limitation. Jamindar were expected to act as a pillar of strength. Jamindar were expected to act as a pillar of strength. But many of the Jamindar, more than 80% of the Jamindar, they were evicted from their ownership by 1820. More than 70% by 1820. And these expelled Jamindar, they are going to fight against EIC during 1857 revolt. So those who were Jamindar at that time, they supported EIC. Those who were expelled, they actually fought against EIC. Are you getting my point? So in each and every expectation, there was inherent limitation. Clear? What was the expectation? That Jamindar and peasant, they would invest, but they never invested. Clear? See, why Jamindars, they were not interested in investing? Reason is very simple. When this auction process was announced by the government, then in that case, Cornwallis actually encouraged the urban element, means people living in the urban area. So most of the Jamindars who became Jamindar at that time, who came in the auction process, either they were rich merchant, rich traders, or they were actually the Gunda element of that particular society or area. Okay, in auction process. So these urban elements, these rich merchants, they used to live in the cities. They were unaware about the local rural condition. So most of the time, the total bidding amount was far more than the total agricultural produce. Suppose I became the landlord of, suppose, X village. Okay, suppose I am the landlord of X village, but I don't know the total production of this village. I am not aware about this area, this region. Suppose this village produce 1 lakh rupees of, you can say, rice or paddy every year. But my bidding amount is more than 1 lakh rupees, 1.2 lakh rupees. So obviously, I'm not going to pay the amount. How can I pay? Okay. So most of the time the bidding amount was actually more than the total agricultural produce of that particular area. And they, if they would not able to pay, then in that case their property was confiscated by the CIC. Many Gunda elements were also inserted. Bahubali, they were also inserted, and they used to exploit pigeons to a maximum possible extent. Okay, so there was inherent limitation in the expectation of the company. That's why this system actually failed miserably, though intention was very good, but this system failed miserably because there was inherent problem in this system. Auction profitable? What is the question? Okay. Auction profitable. It was profitable not for the Britishers as well as for the Jamindar also, because most of the urban element, they were not aware about the local rural economy. Okay, so bidding amount was very high. Clear? So ultimately, who suffered? Peasants. Peasants suffered immensely. Okay, and this system proved to be disastrous for the rural economy. I hope this is clear. Permanent settlement. So in mains, in prelims, UPSC may ask the various provision. Okay, what do you mean by sunset clause, haptum, etc., etc., statement 1, 2, 3, 4. But in mains, they could ask, means what was the expectation of the company while introducing decennial or permanent settlement? So you must write that was the expectation. UPSC may also ask what were the limitation that was there in the permanent settlement, because of which peasants of India actually suffered, our rural economy suffered. In any way, UPSC may ask question. Okay, are you getting my point? So note it down. Note it down. Expectation. Next heading, expectation. Right. It was expected that it was expected that the company would get, it was expected that the company would get a fixed, it was expected that the company would get fixed, stable and secure income without any responsibility. Next point, it was also expected that that the company officers would be free from free from the responsibility of revenue collection. Free from the responsibility of revenue collection, and they could be used for other important activities. Next point, Zamindars were expected to act as a pillar of strength for company. Zamindars were expected to act as a pillar of strength for company, because the existence of Zamindar was dependent on the existence of the company. Because pillar of strength, they were expected to act as a pillar of strength because the existence of Zamindar was dependent on the existence of the company, the existence of survival of Jamindar was dependent on the existence of the company. Next point. It was expected that peasants and Jamindar would take deep interest in the progress of agriculture. Would take deep interest in the progress of agriculture, and they would invest in agricultural infrastructure. They would invest in agricultural infrastructure. Because any increase in production was to benefit them. Paragraph change and write. But this system failed miserably. Because first, while inviting in auction, Cornwallis encouraged the urban element. Urban element means people living in urban area, rich merchant, traders, etc. Encouraged the urban element in the bidding process. And these urban element were unaware. These urban people were unaware about the Indian rural economy. Okay. They believe that this auction process would pave the path of quick accumulation of wealth. Okay, that was the case. Even today, suppose if government released tender to construct road, highways, etc. So people generally go for, or government select the highest bidder, and that bidder also know that once we get the contract, then in that case, so that is the case. Next point, right? These landlords sometimes put forwarded impractically high bid, and sometimes the bidding amount was more than total agricultural produce. total agricultural produce. Okay. Next point, note it down, then I'll explain. This system also gave birth to absentee landlordism. This system also gave birth to absentee landlordism. See, EIC, peasants. Middleman was created, that is landlord. But these landlords, they used to live in urban areas. So they appointed another middleman. And responsibility of this middleman was to collect the revenue from the peasants. So he is known as what? Absentee landlordism. Means he is acting as a landlord in the absence of original landlord. So this is the meaning of absentee landlordism. Because in the absence of main landlord, this from the peasants. Clear? Okay. So this is the concept of absentee landlordism. Any question? Any problem? So this is about the decennial or permanent settlement. Clear? Any question? Any doubt? If you can ask. No doubt. No question. Very good. I am going to discuss two more topics that did not place during the time of Cornwallis, but it is associated with the land revenue settlement. So here we'll discuss. Second is Rayyat Wari settlement. Rayyat Wari settlement. Rayyat Wari settlement. Rayyat means farmer, peasants. Rayyat means peasants, farmer. Clear? See, this system was introduced by whom? Rayyat Wari settlement. Cornwallis? No. From 1790 to 99 in Baramahal region of Madras Presidency by British administrator Alexander Reed. Alexander Reed. On an experimental basis, pilot basis. On an experimental basis. So for the first time, this system was introduced in Madras Presidency in Baramahal region on an experiment, not in whole Madras Presidency, but in some region, Baramahal region, in Madras Presidency by Alexander Reed on an experimental basis. Pilot project was launched. Okay. At that time, Thomas Munro was his subordinate. Thomas Munro was his subordinate. In 1820, Thomas Munro, he became the governor of Madras. Governor of Madras. And when he became the governor of Madras, in Madras Presidency, he introduced this Rayyat Wari settlement. Clear? So who introduced the system? Remember the name Alexander Reed as well as Thomas Munro. Alexander Reed introduced, but on an experimental basis. In whole presidency, it was introduced by Thomas Munro in 1820. Clear? See, important feature of Rayyat Wari settlement. EIC, peasants, Rayyat. Earlier in permanent settlement, landlord used to be there. So it was acting as what? Middleman. So this middleman system or this middleman culture is good or bad? Obviously it is bad. So this system, so middleman was removed. Here Rayyat in Rayyatwari settlement, Rayyat peasants, they became what? Owner of the land. Owner of land. And EIC used to collect revenue through officers, through English officers from the peasants. Clear? Okay. And in this system, some scientific method of revenue collection was also introduced. That land revenue was actually fixed from 1/3 to 2/5 of total agricultural produce. Land revenue was fixed from 1/3 to it varied from 1/3 to 2/5 of the total produce. That is from total agricultural produce, that is from 33% to 40%. Clear? It was fixed from, so it was varied from 1/3 to 2/5. Okay. If the soil is more fertile, water availability would be there, then in that case 40% tax would be there. And if the fertility of soil is less, in that case 33% of the revenue would be paid by the Rayyat to the EIC. That arrangement was made. That was also scientific in nature. Okay, proper, and that land was also measured or through proper survey and all such kind of thing. Clear? So this was the case. But problem in this act, Rayyatwari settlement, there is no middleman. So the system is good, but in reality, the Rayyat under this settlement, peasants under this settlement suffered more as compared to the management. The peasants suffered more. They are the owner of the land, but still they are suffering. The reason is very simple. Earlier landlord, they used to collect the revenue. Now English officials, they are actually collecting the revenue. So who will be more harsh on the Indian citizen? English officers. So they used to say, give me a bribe. Okay. And I'll show on the document that your production is less. And if farmer would not be able to pay the bribe on time, then in that case, their production was highly inflated, deliberately inflated. Let us suppose I am farmer doing farming on 10-acre land. And my total produce is, let us suppose, 1,000 quintal of, or 1,000 ton of, whatever you say, of paddy or rice. Okay. So I have to pay 1/3 or 2/5 of the total produce, okay, as a tax to the government. If I am paying bribe to the British officials, then in that case, that figure would be lessened by them. But if I am not able to pay bribe on time, then in that case, they would say that I am producing not 1,000 but 1,500 quintal of paddy. So I have to pay 33% or 40% of this amount as a tax to the government. So in reality, it was more than 70-80%. So that's why in Rayyatwari settlement, peasants suffered immensely. In the settlement, peasants suffered immensely. And many times farmers their agriculture and forest area or native estate because they were not in position to actually pay the tax. Are you getting my point? So 1/3 tax is actually very high. Today, India is a democratic country. But still daily 1 or 2 news you will get that farmer from this particular area is committing suicide. Currently, what is the tax on agriculture? Tax कितना है agriculture पे? कितना %? 0. There is no tax on agriculture. Still farmer, they are suffering. Are you getting my point? At that time, even 33 or 15 or 1% of the tax was actually for more disastrous, because at that time there was no technology, big technology available. Even today, a lot of area came under the irrigation. Government also helped actually pigeons to invest in the agricultural infrastructure. Modern equipments is actually used by farmer even today, but still this agricultural business is not profitable in India. Farmers, they commit suicide regularly. Even in your state, you see the what data. Clear? So now you can imagine the suffering of farmer at that time during the time of the East India Company. Even 20% tax was actually far more dangerous at that time. And they used to collect how much? 70%, 80%. Clear? So ultimately, who suffered? Rayat. Farmers, they actually suffered immensely under this settlement also. Clear? And this settlement was introduced in Bombay Presidency also in 1825. 1825 by Stuart Elphinstone. Later on, it was also applied to Assam. Okay, in many states, this system was actually imposed. Okay, and this system proved to be far more dangerous as compared to the permanent settlement. There was problem in permanent settlement, but here there was no middleman. In spite of that, farmers, they were actually suffering because of the greed of the corrupt English officials. Clear? Because of the greed of the corrupt English officials. So that was also the limitation of this settlement. Clear? Clear? Rayatwari settlement. So note it down. In this settlement, right? In this settlement, comma, the company entered into land revenue. The company under this settlement, the company entered into land revenue agreement with individual peasants. So these peasants were considered as a owner of the land. And they were to deposit the revenue themselves. They were to deposit the revenue themselves to the company. As there was no middleman. Next point. This settlement was introduced by Alexander Reed, REED, Alexander Reed, in Baramahal region. During 1792 to 99. During 1792 to 99, on experimental basis. Next point. Thomas Munro was the subordinate officer of Alexander Reed. Thomas Munro was the subordinate officer of Alexander Reed, and when he became the governor of Madras, he introduced this settlement in Madras Presidency. He introduced this settlement in Madras Presidency. This settlement in Madras Presidency. Okay, next point. In 1825, Stuart Elphinstone introduced this in Bombay. Introduced this in Bombay region. Stuart Elphinstone introduced this in Bombay region, and later on it was also introduced in Assam. Next point. Later it was also introduced in Assam. Next point. The amount of land revenue, was to be calculated through survey and measurement of land. Survey of means fertility of soil and all this thing, availability of irrigation facility, survey and the measurement of land. Next point. In theory, comma, the rate of land revenue was between, in theory, the rate of land revenue was between 1/3 to 2/5 of the total agricultural produce. 1/3 to 2/5 of the total agricultural produce. But in reality, the burden was more than 80%. Burden was more than 80%. Because the gross production, was deliberately inflated by the, deliberately means knowingly, inflated by the company officials. Inflated by the company officials. Clear? Next point. So the outcome of Rayatwari settlement, was far more destructive than permanent settlement. Far more destructive than permanent settlement. Clear? Next point. More than half of the agricultural land were abandoned by peasants, and they escaped either into forest or neighboring native state. Native state means ruled by local king, prince, or neighboring native state. Neighboring native state. So this is what Raiyatwari settlement. And last settlement, Mahalwari settlement. Mahalwari settlement. See, the term Mahal refer to village, or you can say group of village. Village or group of village. तो क्या बोलते हैं? महल. It is known as Mahal. That's why Mahalwari settlement. See, this system was actually introduced by Holt Mackenzie and William Bentinck. It was introduced by Holt Mackenzie and William Bentinck. Clear? And this was introduced basically in north-western province, Agra, later on Punjab, and CP, Central Province. In these areas, this system was actually introduced. By whom? Holt Mackenzie as well as William Bentinck. Clear? Now come to the provision. This system had the feature of both permanent settlement as well as Raiyat settlement. This system had the provision of both permanent settlement as well as Raiyat settlement. How? See, Raiyat settlement. In Raiyat settlement, who are the owner of the land? Peasants. So here also, peasants, they are the owner of land. And what was the important feature of permanent settlement? There was provision of middleman, landlord. In this system, there is no concept of landlord, but there was actually middleman. There were middlemen, and responsibility were given actually to these middlemen to actually collect the revenue for the company. So a committee was actually formed in each and every mahal or village, you can say, and that committee actually used to collect the revenue from the peasants and they used to deposit to the company. I hope this is clear. So again, this middleman concept was introduced, and peasants, they suffered. Okay, because the interference of the British officials was very high on the middleman as well as on the peasants. Clear? So they were not the owner of the land, they were just as a middleman, acting as a middleman, and they were working for the company. And influence of English officials was also there on the, suppose if farmer refused to pay or were not able to pay the revenue on time, then in that case, they were at the mercy of the middlemen, or you can say English officials. I hope this is clear. So this system also proved to be destructive for the peasants. Okay, so now you know the difference between permanent settlement, Raiyatwari settlement as well as Mahalwari settlement. I hope this is clear. Okay, so this is the basic difference and important provision of Mahalwari settlement. Clear? Who is the owner of the land? Peasants, and middleman village committee was actually formed, and they were given responsibility to collect the revenue from the peasants. Okay, so that's all. Clear? So three important settlement was there: permanent, Raiyat, as well as Mahalwari settlement. Clear? So note it down. Mahalwari system was introduced. Mahalwari system was introduced by Holt Mackenzie and William Bentinck. Holt Mackenzie and William Bentinck William Benting. In Central Province, comma, Northwestern Frontier, Punjab, Agra, etc. Next point. This system had provision of both permanent settlement, as well as Rayyatwari settlement. Had the provision of both permanent settlement as well as Rayyatwari settlement. Next point. Ownership right was with the peasants. And village committee was formed. Which was responsible to collect the revenue. Clear? Next point. In this system, lands were divided into various mahal. Lands were divided into various mahal. And each mahal comprised of one or more villages. Clear? One or more villages. So this is about the land revenue settlement. Clear? Any question? William Benting became the Governor General. He was the first Governor General of India. We'll discuss later. You'll get to know. Don't worry. See, agriculture even today is basically the state subject. So governor also had the right to introduce this in their presidency. Okay. So at that time also, it was basically the provincial subject. Even today, it is part of state subject. I mean, the state government has the authority to make any kind of rule and regulation regarding agriculture. Okay. Clear? So this is the land revenue. Now come to the Cornwallis again. So he did tremendous work in the field of land revenue settlement. Second, when Cornwallis arrived, I told you already, Robert Clive, he was corrupt official. Warren Hastings was corrupt. So corruption was another important issue. Okay. And British Parliament directed him actually to tackle this situation. Okay. And he was from very rich from noble family, aristocracy. So he did not need money. Clear? So first task was given to actually settle the revenue system, and second to address the property corruption in the company. Okay. So problem of corruption was there, and he is going to address this problem. See, why so issue of corruption was there. So he addressed this problem very effectively. Why there was corruption? Because salary was very low. Suppose tomorrow you are going to become an IAS officer. It is one of the toughest exam, not of India, but of the world, you can say. 10 lakh, 7 lakh, 8 lakh people each and every year gives exam. And only 700, 800 people. So salary, how much salary you will get when you become IAS officer? 60,000, 70,000, not more than that. So salary is actually low. That's why there is a lot of corruption in the bureaucracy. Though government provide many other facilities. One of my friend is IPS. So he told me that on an average, government actually government provides salary 70,000. That is very less. But apart from that, 10 lakh rupees government is spend actually each and every year to on each IPS officer. Because a lot of facilities, car and all such kind of facilities actually provided. The salary is still very low. So that was an important cause of that was very important cause of actually the corruption. Salary of the EIC officials was actually very less. So to address the problem, he increased the salary of the company officials. So he increased the salary of the company officials. Second cause of. So he addressed the second problem of only now could enter into the company services. Only qualified people. And no recommendation, especially from the CEO, court of given any weightage. Okay. Earlier, 24 members were there, shareholders. Actually, they used to send their kith and kin in the company services. But most of them, they were indulged in illegal activities and they were making a lot of money. Clear? So second problem was also addressed, only qualified people enter the services and no tests were actually given to the recommendation of COD, influential people of England. Okay. Third, he said that we increased the salary. No, they were making money through what? Private trade. Company was in loss, but officials, they were making profit. So they were making profit themselves and they were working not for the company, but for their own greed, for their own profit. So private trade or private businesses was completely banned. Okay. And along with that, he also said that top post, he was also racist. Cornwallis. He said that top post in the company services would be reserved only for the Europeans. Because he believed that not only he, whole of the Europe, you can say at that time, believed that these Asian people, they were actually uncivilized. They are not worthy to occupy the higher post. So actually only for the Europeans. So these were major reforms by Lord Cornwallis, and here through this step he actually solved or addressed the problem of the corruption which was prevalent here in the East India Company. Okay. So note it down. Other reform of Cornwallis. As new rules, as per new rules, only qualified people who enter into the company services. Qualified people enter into the company services. Next point. No recommendation from England. no recommendation from England would win weightage. Would be given weightage for the appointment in the company. Would be given weightage for the no recommendation from England would be given weightage for the appointment in company. Next point. The private trade of all the company servant. The private trade of all the companies was abolished. The private trade of all the company servant was abolished. Next point. Salary of the were increased. Salary of the officials were increased. Next point. Top post in the company were reserved only for the Europeans. Top post in the company were for Europeans. Point. Deprived of revenue collector were deprived of their due power. Revenue collector were deprived of judicial power. See here, judicial power. See, revenue collector had the responsibility to collect the revenue from the peasants, and he also had judicial authority to actually solve the or address the issue of the farmers. Again, both the posts could not be held by a single person because it lead to conflict of interest. Who are the exploitator of peasants? This revenue collector. And who is the judge? This revenue collector. So again, there is conflict of interest. So that's why this arrangement was actually made. The revenue collector were free from the judicial responsibility. Okay, and judicial reform was also introduced by Lord Cornwallis. So next heading, right? Judicial reform of Lord Cornwallis. Judicial reform of Lord Cornwallis. Okay, so the revenue collector, they were deprived of the judicial responsibility. Clear? So he is going to introduce certain changes in the judiciary, and he is going to reform or overhaul, you can say, the judiciary, because he established new judicial system. Okay, so this topic, it will take time, so I'll discuss after the break. At 2 o'clock we'll discuss. Okay, thank you.